Thank you, Bernie. I love sharing the podium with Bernie because he knows your industry so much better than I do, and he's given you a lot of the specific micro details. And I can't disagree with anything you said, Bernie. My forecast for the U.S. economy is 2010 and 2011 look pretty sluggish. I don't think you see a robust recovery, something growth significantly above 3% in terms of GDP, probably until 2012. So I think we've got a painfully slow recovery, and I'll give you some economic reasons behind that. I also want to talk and give you a little, I'm basically an economist, but I like to paint with a broom and look at long swings in business and economic history. And I want to make a case that the period we just came through, 1980 through 2007, that 25-year growth bubble was really an aberration in the history of the American economy. It is the greatest 25-year period of growth and prosperity we have ever seen. And I'll point to 4 or 5 factors that created almost a perfect storm for economic growth, and we may never see that again in our lifetime. That doesn't mean there won't be pockets of great activity. Places like Atlanta, my home city of Dallas, I think have tremendous long-term potential. But I think growth in the future is going to be overall more sluggish over the next 20 or 25 years than it was over the past 25 years. And I think it will be more selective about where it happens. And that's kind of where I'm going over the next 20 minutes or so, 15 minutes, and then we'll take some time for a few questions. As I said, I think this recovery is very slow. I'm more concerned today than I was 2 weeks ago about a double dip in 2011. You don't hear a lot of that, but I read about 50 national forecasts around this time of the year because I'm talking almost daily in Dallas to different groups about where I see the economy going. And recently, I looked at these 50 forecasters a month ago, and I looked then 2 weeks later. 30% of the people that I'm looking to are now calling for a double dip recession in 2011, up from 20% 2 weeks earlier. Now, what's the case for the double dip? And this is not my forecast. I don't think we're going to slip into recession in 2011, so don't choke on your steak. That's not mine, but I'll tell you, I hired on September 1st, I hired a fellow named Michael Cox, who for the past 25 years was a senior economist, for the past 12 years was chief economist for the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, and was director of research for all of the Federal Reserve Bank districts in the country. So Michael knows a lot. He's a Fed insider for 25 years and is now full-time on my faculty. And in the past month, he and I have done probably half a dozen shows, programs in Dallas for different groups. And we were together 2 weeks ago, and the question came up, well, what's the likelihood of a double dip? And I was surprised. We're sitting there at the same table, small group, bunch of chief financial officers, and he said, I put it at 50%. This is my new faculty member. He's got a 50% probability of a double dip. Now, how do you make the case for the double dip? Because then you got to ask, well, how could you say that? Well, 3 things happen in 2011. One, all the federal stimulus package, such as it is, has been spent by the end of next year. So there's no fiscal stimulus coming from the federal government. The Bush tax cuts expire, and that will be a significant drag on the economy. And thirdly, if you start getting an uptick in inflation and the Fed is forced to raise interest rates, the combination of higher interest rates, higher taxes, and the loss of fiscal stimulus from the government, that's the case for the double dip. There are more people every day moving toward this recovery that began in the third quarter of this year, probably runs all through 2010, and then early in 2011, we start sliding again. This happened back in the early 80s. Some of you may remember that. And it's not good stimulative policy to cut spending and raise taxes in a very fragile recovery. But let me make my case for the fragile recovery. I'm going to talk about first jobs. You read this is a jobless recovery. It is. The unemployment rate will continue to worsen probably for another 5 months. I don't think we hit bottom till March or April. Could even slide. I watched two economists on CNBC Monday morning who are predicting the unemployment rate would hit a peak of 11% in June or July. I think that's overly pessimistic, but my number is 10.5% probably in March or April, currently at 10.2. I think the job situation has really surprised the Obama administration, but I think they're partially to blame for the lack of jobs. The stimulus package, so named, was $787 billion of federal spending. But I've scrubbed through what the stimulus package was. And the kindest estimate I can give is about $140 billion of the $787 was targeted at creating jobs. The more critical I say only 120 of the $787 billion had anything to do with creating jobs in this economy. So it wasn't a jobs bill. Normally, the stimulus package we get from the federal government in a recession is tax cuts and job incentives. There was none of that really in this stimulus package. It was a bailout of state governments. And a lot of large public universities got windfall grants because the president turned the stimulus package over to your congresswoman. No, Bernie. Nancy Pelosi and our great friends, Barney Frank, in Congress wrote the stimulus bill. And if you look at all the pork in that bill, it was handouts to special interests and most of the money. And that's why the Obama people had projected the unemployment rate would peak at 8.5. And now everybody thinks it's going to go to 10.5, and some people saying 11. They're surprised by how bad this got. But they didn't address the real issue of job creation. Second thing, and I spoke to a group yesterday in Cobb County, about 550 people, another group of about 350 this morning, and a lot of these are small business people. And boy, did this resonate with them. I said, the second public policy error I think the administration has made is they have put health care as their number one issue. Health care is a big factor in the cost of labor. And many small and medium-sized businesses are absolutely freezing their hiring until they see where the health care debate goes. I'm not saying it's not an important issue, but small business especially, doesn't like uncertainty, and the whole health care debate has created a terrible wave of uncertainty about future labor costs, and they have frozen labor markets. So the unemployment rate is going up for about another 5, maybe 6 months. That makes for a very weak recovery in 2010. The housing market. There were a lot of home builders at the event I was at this morning. And I spent 10 minutes with two of them afterwards, and it's unbelievable, the inventory, especially in this part of the world, in residential. From 1945 through 2007, every year we built at least 1 million new units to the housing stock, going back to the end of World War II. This year we're going to build 550,000 houses. We're back to a Depression-era residential business in America. 2010, the most optimistic estimates are 750,000 new housing units. That's apartments, condos, and single family. Again, you have to go back to the 1930s to find that lower level of housing. So you've got a very weak housing market. You got very little job creation. I think the unemployment rate this time next year probably is about 9.9, might even still be 10%. Doesn't get much better all through 2010.